The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need.
Welcome, everybody. A belated happy Easter from the Keeer family to you and yours. Hope you had a wonderful celebration. It's the most significant, holiest day of the year for certain in the Christian faith. It's the day of the absolute renewal of faith, the abundance of joy and appreciation, and really the basic premise of what the Christian religion is founded upon, that the Son of God came back to earth in human form to die on the cross, atone for sinners, and really set the stage for the life that we all lead. And it's a holy day. It's a special family day. Was privileged to spend the day in Tuscaloosa. My son's very serious relationship. Probably, I'm not going to look too much in the crystal ball, but likely future daughter-in-law. They were kind enough to invite me yesterday to their big celebration. A lot of folks down in Tuscaloosa had a lot of time to talk sports with all kinds of different fellas that I had not had the opportunity to meet before, and just interact with that great family unit. It was really kind of a slice of America that I think is absent in a lot of cases, unfortunately, and maybe your families do collective big gatherings and such. But it just seems to me like when I was a kid, every big holiday, somebody had some deal where there were, 50, 60, 100 people, big cookouts and barbecues and fireworks displays on the 4th of July and parties for Halloween. And is it me, or have we kind of gotten away from that as a culture and kind of just, I don't know, descended back into our homes, never to come out or be seen? Because we've got everything at our fingertips electronically to interact with people. I just think it's a part of America that maybe is kind of disappearing, and maybe in more of the less urban areas, more the rural areas of the country, maybe those traditions still are very much alive, and I'm sure they are in certain circumstances. But it just seems to me in my younger years, that was kind of the norm, and now it's kind of unusual to find yourself in a gathering. There are probably 40 or so people yesterday, but it was a delightful opportunity to just kind of get back to some roots and, remember what holidays used to be about. Too many times with no work going on, days off for certain holidays. I find that many of these, particularly Easter's past, I've spent a lot of time just sitting around by myself. And so I again want to express my appreciation to my host yesterday down in Tuscaloosa, my daughter-in-law, Brooke Houston, the Houston and the related families that had me down yesterday for that. I want to talk a little bit about some of the nonsense that we're seeing going on in the news. I don't want to harp on it. I touched on it last week, but we're really seeing an absurd situation in this country that I hope all of you, your antennas have come up and you really kind of understand what we are witnessing here, because the whole story of this guy from Maryland and the fact that I even just slipped up and said he's from Maryland. He's not from Maryland. He's from San Salvador, El Salvador. This guy Garcia, who is more in the news now than any world leader, any other issue, because the Democrat-run mainstream legacy media, lame ass media is what I call it. They are making such a big story about this, and this senator. First of all, if you're from Maryland, I originally grew up my first 9 years of life in Rockville, Maryland, born in Washington, D.C. And I'm ashamed of my Maryland roots because of the absolute nonsense of one of their senators, this Van Hollen character, who is making the biggest deal about this Garcia guy being deported to San Salvador. We will get into the kind of the minutia of this in just a minute. But of course, he's already grandly flown on taxpayer dollars to El Salvador, demanding to see this guy. That we don't even really know what his status is there. The president of El Salvador said he's not returning him to the United States, that he is a recognized criminal terrorist, member of the MS-13 gang, one of the most vicious gangs responsible for crime waves, for assaults, for child rapes, for murders. MS-13 is hardcore. Donald Trump signed an executive order on his first day in office declaring MS-13 and the Venezuelan equivalent Tren de Agra as terrorist organizations, which gives him wide sweeping powers to throw these guys out of the country. And you've got a lot of this debate going on that Garcia was mistakenly ejected. I love this from this senator. And what I wanted to finish that thought was, I'm ashamed to have lived in Maryland and to have a lot of Maryland relatives and roots, because Maryland elected a guy like Van Hollen as their senator. And this guy is just a grandstanding, typical, look at me, I'm doing all this great work for democracy and protecting the Constitution and the rights. This kills me. The rights of this Marylander, this resident of our state, this father, this exemplary citizen who wears gear that identifies himself as an MS-13 member, has all the tattoos of membership with their slogans and their symbols. On his knuckles, he has the coded message MS-13. This guy has got a long history of associating directly with this organization that's been declared terrorist, and yet this senator and the media just continues to slam down your throat that this guy is just a regular dude, a father, a husband, a Marylander. First of all, this guy, I don't care where he sets up shop, he is not a Marylander. He is not a citizen of Maryland. He is not even a resident of Maryland. He is an intruder in Maryland because the way this guy entered the country. He came in 2012 illegally. He did not come through the proper channels. He has never had a proper immigration hearing or entered the process to try and do it the correct way. People use the word immigrant to describe people like this. I've said it many times on various broadcasts, including this one, that immigration is a legal process. Immigration is not somebody who sneaks into the country and avoids detection and just tries to blend in and disappear. Immigration is a legal process. This guy is an invader. This guy is a migrant criminal. Alien. First of all, if you believe in the Constitution, like all of these media people and Van Hollen, and now 4 other Democrats who want to travel to El Salvador to talk to this guy, really just have photo ops, because this is the guy that they have decided to throw their support behind and to prop up as the example of the abuses of the Trump administration, trampling on the Constitution, Constitution, taking away your rights potentially, and denying this citizen, this resident, this intruder, his day in court for due process to decide if deportation was proper. The Constitution and amendments thereof, the 1798 hostile ally, or I'm trying to think of the word they use, but there was a provision in the Constitution 1798 to dispel hostile actors that are in this country that mean harm and destruction to the United States. And the Supreme Court upheld that statute that amendment is still in the mainstream of being able to be devices the president can use if he and the Secretary of State decides that somebody is a danger to the country that is not a citizen. Any citizen, this is the difference in all of this, where now the media is telling you, be afraid, be very afraid, because if you disagree with this government, they can just make you disappear. It's the new strategy. Last week it was chaos. Week to week, it's destroying democracy. Now it's disappear fear, that if you say anything counter to this administration or this current government or Republicans in general, you could be plucked up in the middle of the night and find yourself the next day in a hardcore El Salvador prison. That is absolute BS. If you're an American citizen, you are not going to disappear and be deported. If you don't have gang affiliations, if you don't have a record, if there's not a running investigation that shows you to be a nefarious criminal element that is bent on the destruction or unlawful practices treasonous to the United States, you're not going to be picked up in the middle of the night, shackled and put on a plane and deported. You're going to get due process. This guy did not deserve due process. This guy is a foreign invader. This guy is documented as an MS-13 member. And you still hear the media saying it. You still hear the senators and these Democrat politicians saying it. They keep saying, and he's just allegedly associated with MS-13. Show us the proof. All right, we'll do that. In 2019, this guy was hauled in for deportation hearings. He had his day in immigration court when they determined he was an illegal person in this country. He did not enter properly. He had never gone through the process of trying to apply for a residency via a green card or try to become a citizen. This guy was just trying to blend in because he was heavily involved in the biggest criminal gang invader organization that all flew below the radar because they knew that detection would mean instant expulsion from this country, that you can't run your criminal enterprise if you're not allowed to be in the country. So none of these people, including Garcia, wanted to be detected. But when he was detected and brought into immigration court, an immigration judge ruled he needs to be deported. Then he appealed. His lawyers, once again, funded by nefarious. This guy didn't have the money or the means or the clout to have these highfalutin law firms defending him. But when you've got guys like George Soros, who was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by the Biden administration at the end of his term, which is probably the biggest insult to any American award or honor ever bestowed on an individual, because George Soros is hell-bent on one thing and one thing only: to take down this country and put it into this globalist column where he and all these other self-proclaimed elites, guys that are smarter than everybody else, smarter than you and me, they know better what's good for the whole world than any of us do, and they don't give a damn about this country. They want to They want its wealth. They want its strength. They want its might. They want its resources to wield their influence all over the world. George Soros has funded with billions of dollars of ill-gotten gain on his part because he's been basically manipulating money markets and just going through the darkest ways of amassing a fortune possible, ruining people and industries and countries in the process. It kills me that if you Google George Soros, it says American philanthropist. Yeah. So once again, George Soros not only funding all of these nefarious organizations and people trying to cause total unrest in this country, but he also has put millions of dollars into one of the most fundamental things in our country, our election system. This guy is finding these people to run for things like secretaries of state in states, the people that oversee elections, and local people, officials like registrars and county clerks and just bureaucratic people that are involved in the election process. And he's bankrolling these elections in all these podunk places around the country. Because remember, I've quoted it before, Joseph Stalin, probably the most evil dictator in the history of the world. He was Stalin's legacy coming along at the same time as Adolf Hitler, who gets credit for being the worst despot ever to rise to power. But Stalin was his clear rival. Stalin says it doesn't matter who casts the votes, it's who counts the votes. And George Soros and his organizations have taken that to heart. This is the funding mechanism for just about everything wrong in this country right now, and for all of the counterculture, want to topple America, hates the idea of democracy, hates the idea of you having individual rights. Anyway, to get back on the source subject, now that we know where all the financing for all this nonsense is coming from, this guy Garcia, being referred to as a Marylander and a father and a citizen of America that is duly promised due process, is utter baloney. We have laws on the books where if the president and the secretary of state decides that somebody is a nefarious criminal, they can take executive action and get their ass out of the country. It's been going on for years. Deportations under the first Obama administration were by the tens of thousands, but nobody batted an eyelash back then because, once again, Obama was above criticism. He was the Messiah. He could do whatever he wanted. But because there's such opposition to Trump, they have to find and you saw it coming. I said it. I heard other analysts say it. You watch when this program starts right after inauguration, where Tom Homan and ICE and the Department of Homeland Security under now Kristi Noem, former governor of South Dakota, when they got rolling and started deporting people, they were going to find some example of somebody who was unfairly sent out of the country, who did not have due process, who did not have his day in court. And guess what? They landed on this Garcia character, and they pushed all their chips. If you're familiar with poker, if you go all in Texas Hold'em poker, there's no pulling your chips out. Once they're on the table, the cards continue to be dealt, and your fate is determined. Win or lose, you can't change your mind. You can fold, but you lose all of the chips that you've already pushed in. Well, they pushed in all the chips originally on Garcia, and now they are doubling down, continuing to insist this guy is not MS-13. This guy is just a Maryland Maryland. He said it 100 times in his statement last week on his way to El Salvador, which was filmed every step of the way like some great docudrama where he was going to rescue this poor citizen of Maryland who had been unfairly dealt with by the awful, dictatorial, Constitution, democracy wrecking Trump administration, that this guy's due process and his rights as a Maryland citizen had been violated. Kept calling him a Marylander. He is not a Marylander. To be a Marylander, to be a citizen of Maryland, you have to be a legal citizen of the United States. Maryland is a state within the United States. He cannot be a Marylander if he's not a United States citizen. It's just lunacy. And the media, once again, jumped right on that because the initial reports were that this was just some hardworking, great father and husband who lived in Maryland, who was unfairly sent away. Some lower level Trump administration official used really regrettable language early on in this process of saying, well, that could have been a clerical error because he was not necessarily targeted. But the bottom line was he wasn't picked up by mistake. It wasn't an error. He wasn't just some guy living in the suburbs that they happened to ship out to El Salvador. This guy was already found by two other courts to be MS-13. The clinching evidence, too, while Van Hollen was on his way to El Salvador to try and meet with this guy, it came out that in two separate years, in 2021 and 2022, these are just recent years, this guy's wife, the mother of this wonderful family man, went and got restraining orders prohibiting him from coming around because he had beaten her severely two different times. So now you've got the senator flying to El Salvador to go and defend his wife-beating client or his resident of Maryland, the illustrious Mr. Garcia, who's accused of wife beating. Then it came out 2 days later that in 2022, also, while driving in a rental van that emanated from Texas, filled with 8 people that were undocumented citizens, the Tennessee Highway Patrol on his way, Garcia driving without a license, is going through Tennessee with 8 illegal migrants in the car and going from Texas to Maryland. Now, the interesting thing about this is none of these passengers in the car had any luggage whatsoever. The clothes on their back was all that they possessed. And here he's driving a rental van, doesn't have a license. So there's no way he could have rented it. It was once again, obviously, another situation where one of these wonderful organizations funded by Mr. Soros or one of his subservient feeder organizations had made all these arrangements. And Mr. Garcia was happily transporting and speeding, by the way, through Tennessee with 8 illegals in the car with no luggage, no papers, no identification. And they all used the no speak English defense. And somehow, some way, the Biden State Department or Department of Justice, somebody interceded and told the Tennessee Highway Patrol, just let them go on their way. It's all good. We got this covered. And it just goes to show you how deep the layers of influence were in this corrupt administration. I don't even like calling it the Biden administration. He was a figurehead. He was a puppet. He had no idea what was going on. It was Obama personnel from his White House staff with the big guy Barack calling the shots. As he once said in an interview, he dreamed of being behind the scenes and still being in charge. That's what we've had the last 4 years. This guy with no license and a van full of illegals with no identification, no paperwork, and no luggage. This was clearly a transport to bring them to Maryland and distribute them in whatever kind of human trafficking or other gang-related activities that they had in their future. So, the bottom line is this guy is not the poster boy. This guy is not a Marylander. This guy is not a U.S. citizen. And for them to imply that you're in danger because this guy can be deported because he's an MS-13 gang member, it's irrefutable. It's absolutely a fact. It's documented in 2 other court proceedings in 2019 in 2 different courts. This guy was ordered deported. He had fancy, high-priced lawyers. Where do those come from, I wonder? How does a guy like Garcia, an illegal migrant invader in the country, get one of the leading law firms in the country to go to court and get him an exemption from deportation in 2019 because there was a rival gang in El Salvador that had vowed to kill him. They'd had a long-running dispute with his family. His lawyers convinced another judge that deporting him to El Salvador would be life-threatening for this individual. So they said, okay, well, you don't deport him there. You can, but he needs to be deported. He could have gone to any other place in the world. They could have sent him to Syria. They could have sent him to Pongo. I don't know. I'm just thinking of the Canary Islands, wherever. But the bottom line is because the system is corrupt, he just blended right back into the woodwork again, never to be bothered until this latest roundup where he did get deported because he is an MS-13 member. He is a wife beater and a criminal. He is a vicious threat to society, and he's a human trafficker. We have all that documented, and yet the media continues to paint this guy as just a good old fella from Maryland who the evil Trump administration has persecuted and unfairly sent away without his day in court. He's not an American citizen. He is in a recognized terrorist organization. They don't get due process. They just get expelled from the country, period, end of story. And all of these heartstrings they're pulling of people that don't really follow what's going on, the media reports and people that get their news from the New York Times or the CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN conglomerate of leftist thought, the state-run media of the Democrat Party, the leftist extremist Democratic Party, if they get their information from there, they are convinced that this guy was just a regular old Joe in Maryland, drinking beer on the weekends, going to his kids' ball games, just being a good old fella, resident of Maryland. Well, once again, he can't be a resident and a citizen of Maryland if he's not a United States citizen and he's here in the country illegally. This guy is a criminal just on the fact that he entered this country and has been here basically living off all of the taxpayer dollars and all of the nefarious support he gets from all these different organizations in a vicious criminal gang for the last 13 years. It's about damn time they shipped his ass out of here. And that's the way I feel. And that's the way it is. And anybody who is sympathetic to this situation is just not looking at all aspects of the situation. They're just buying the BS they're being fed and that's being crammed down their throat every day in the American media. Marylander? No, not a citizen, not a Marylander, not a sympathetic figure. They picked the wrong guy to put on the pedestal to demonstrate how reckless the Trump policies are. If you're an American citizen, you are not going to fall into the bucket along with Mr. Garcia, the great Maryland citizen and solid resident of the state of Maryland, whose senator sees fit to represent him, fly to El Salvador Salvador to try to effect his release and return to the United States, while one of his citizens, Rachel Morin, mother of 5, who is a United States citizen, who was a resident of Maryland her whole life, who this guy is legitimately her senator, when she was brutally murdered by another El Salvador illegal with MS-13 gang ties, and raped, brutally strangled to death, and left in the woods on a hiking trail. When she was brutally murdered, guess what contact this great crusading senator gave the Morin family? Zero, nada, nothing. He didn't even acknowledge her passing. He now is trying to backtrack and says, well, if you go back, you'll see on the record I said this is a tragic circumstance. Gee, Senator, that was a brilliant testament to the completely unacceptable fate that poor Rachel Morin and her 5 children, who now have no mother, has had to endure, and her own mother, who has been front and center the last couple of weeks, just saying how just devastating it is that this guy is taking a stance on behalf of this MS-13 gang member, when one of their own citizens, her daughter, was brutally raped and murdered by one of his counterparts. So this story stinks to high heaven. Don't buy the BS, everybody. This guy is right where he belongs, back in his home country of El Salvador. He is not, even by some reports, even incarcerated there right now. And all the threat about being afraid of the rival gang, since the new president has come in, they have cleaned up El Salvador. They have ridded that country of all of this gang activity. It has gone from the murder capital of the world in recent years to one of the safest countries on the entire planet since the new president has been installed. And this guy has completely just eliminated that rival, the 18th Street gang, that this vicious criminal Garcia was so terrified of to go back home because of a long-standing family dispute. So we don't want to be redundant, but I just want to drive home the point that everything they're telling you in the mainstream, lamestream, bogus media is total BS. That's all I got for this week. I hope you had a wonderful Easter. Your spirits are renewed. Go out and do something great. Be kind to each other, and love your family, and celebrate your friends. It's great to be an American. It's a privilege to be an American, and none of us need to ever forget that. I'm Kip Keefer. We'll be with you again next week right here on another edition of Need to Know.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.